Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we'll be learning how to make this pencil skirt, this long pencil skirt with a slit at the back, and it is fully lined. It also has a band, so because of the pattern of the fabric you might not be able to see it, but it has a band. So we'll be learning how to make this skirt today. So I'll be using this Ankara fabric, this pattern fabric, and I'm making use of my waist measurements, my hip measurements, and the length of my skirt. And I'll also be making use of my waist to my hip and waist to my knee line. Now to take out the band, I'm taking out 1.5 inch first of all, and then I'm marking from there to my hip line. From there also I'm using 18 inches for my knee line, so I'm marking my hip line, my knee line, and the full length of my skirt. So I will not cut it the full length out yet because I'll be folding it up by the time I want to cut the lining. So I'm just going to be marking everything out clearly so you see my waist to my hip line, my waist to my knee line, and my waist to my full length. Remember to take out the 1.5 that I'm using for the band if you want yours to have a band. But if you don't want yours to have a band, you can just go ahead and mark it straight ahead from that starting point. So now I'm just going to be cutting out this starting point, this line out. Now I'm going to be dividing my waist measurement by 4, and I'll put whatever I have there. Also divide my hip measurement by 4 and I'll mark it. For my knee line, I'm going to subtract 2 inches from my hip and bring it down to my knee. You can also subtract 1.5, but it shouldn't be more than 2.5 if you want it very tight. But 2 inches is just perfect. Also 1.5 inches works. So I'll just take whatever I have there and bring it down to the full length as well. Now I'll just mark it, and then I'll connect it with a straight line. I'll connect this part with a curve, and then I'll come down by 1.5 inches from my hip line so it is not too sharp by the time I'm drawing the curve. Now I'll connect it straight to my knee line, and also with a straight line, with a straight ruler, I'm going to connect it down to my full length. So now I'm going to be adding my seam allowances just the same way I shaped this. Is this the way I'm going to be shaping the part that has the seam allowance. So I added 1 inch on the hip, the waist, and the knee, and the floor length as well, and then I reconnected it the same way. Make sure that that part is not too pointy. Even if it's a bit pointy, by the time you are sewing it, it shouldn't be pointy. If not, you are going to be having ears on your hip. There's going to be puffs on your hip. So now I'm just going to be cutting out the front part. Now notice this part where I have my full length. I'm going to come down from my full length by 1.5 because I don't want the lining to be what will show at the edge of my skirt. So I want to fold this part in. So after my full length, I'm coming down again by 1.5. Then I'm going to be folding it up and ironing it. Know that part is already my full length, but I just want this part to be like a covering. So if you look at the skirt, this is the part you will first of all see before you see the lining. Now I'm flipping it over to the wrong side, and I'll fold it and I will iron it the same way as well. So by the time I place my lining on top, it is just what is going to be showing at the edge is the fabric before you will see the lining. So now I'm going to be placing the front on another separate piece of fabric. Now on this fabric, I've already gone ahead to iron the edge. So I'm just going to be placing what I already cut from. Now I will place the front part of the skirt on top of this part that I've already ironed. So this is what I'll be using for my back of the skirt, for the back of my skirt. So now I'll go ahead and subtract 1.5 inch from the waistline to mark my hip allowance, to mark my hip line, sorry. So I'll just rule out my hip line. Now on that hip line is where I'm going to be adding my bum allowance. Now I'll be using 1.5 inches for my butt contour. If the person has a very big bum, you can use up to 2 inches, but it shouldn't be too curvy. Now on the waistline, I went ahead for my zipper allowance. I went ahead to add 0.75. Now I'll connect it to the part where I have my butt contour. Now I went ahead to also mark 11 inches. That is what I'm going to be using for my zip allowance, and my zip is going to be ending at that 11 inches. Now from that 11 inches, I'm going to be marking 1 inch all the way to the full length of the skirt, which is what I'm marking now. So that part is what I'll use to sew in my slit and sew in the part where my zip will be tucking. So now I'll just go ahead and roll it straight all the way to the full length of the skirt. On that part where you have your butt contour, make sure that you don't do it too curvy so that it doesn't point out. If it is too curvy, it's going to point out. Now if it's somebody that has a very big bum, you can use up to 2 inches, but 1.5 is just perfect. If the more the curve, the more pointy it gets. So I think 1.5 is just perfect. Now for my lining, I've gone ahead to fold it, and now you notice how I placed the part where I ironed. I placed the part where I ironed on top of the tip of the lining. So by the time I sew my lining, it's just going to be on top of that part where I ironed. So you notice I didn't put the lining all the way to the floor to the full length. I just put it on top of where I already ironed. So I'll do the same thing for the back as well. Now just place it the same way I placed the one for the front. You notice I dragged it down a bit to the part where the fold is starting from. The part where the fold is starting from is where I placed the tip of the lining. So I'll just go ahead and cut it. Make sure that you cut your lining on exact. Now I've already gone ahead to iron my interface. I iron S-stay on a straight strip of fabric. This is the part I'll be using for the band. Now for the band, I'll be using 2.5 inches. Remember that we separated 1.5 inch for the band, but on the joining parts of the waistline, we are going to be using 1/2 inch, which makes it 2 inches. Then on the top parts, to join it at the top, we're going to be also using 1/2 inch, which is making it 2.5 inches. So I'm trying to rule out 2.5 inches because I'm going to be cutting this band at the upper part and at the lower part, so it's going to be opened. By the time I've started sewing, you understand what I mean. So the band is going to be also on the lining. So the same way I'll sew the band on the main fabric is the same way I'm going to sew the band on the lining as well. So now I'm just going to be cutting the upper part open. So one part of this band is going for the main fabric while the other part is going for the lining. So you can make yours very long so that it will be enough for the one that will go to the front and for the back. So now for the slit, I've gone ahead to iron interface on the slit. I just want it to be a bit firm so it doesn't get wobbly. So I just want it to be a bit firm. That is why I ironed paper stay on it. Now I'm taking out 1.5 now from the waist of my skirt to mark out my zipper allowance. So because I'm going to be sewing from my zipper allowance to where I notched for my slit. So I'm trying to measure the 1 inch. So now from that part where my zip is going to start is where I'm sewing all the way down to the part where I have the notch for my slit. So when I get there, I'm going to stop. Remember that we're going to repeat the same process for the lining as well. So now I'll first of all go ahead and sew the band at the upper part of my back skirt, the back of my skirt panel. So I'll go ahead and sew the band on 1/2 inch. I'll sew on one side. Remember that the back is split into two because of the part that has the zip. I'll sew on one side, then I'll cut and go ahead and sew on the other part. I'll also go ahead and sew the band on the front part of the skirt as well. So on the front waist part of the skirt, I'm going to sew my band on it. Now remember that it's the same way that we sewed the band on the skirt on the front part of the skirt. It's the same way we're going to also sew it on the lining as well. So the same way that we did it for the main fabric is the same way we're going to do it for the lining, just the same thing. So for the lining, I'll go ahead and take out my 1.5 as well, and I'll measure to where my zipper is going to start from. Now I'm going to sew that part up to where I have the notch for my slit. Now I'm going to be sewing in the bands as well. So now I've gone ahead to iron the band on the skirt, and I also went ahead to iron the slit open. I did the same thing for the lining as well as I did for the main fabric. Now I'm going to be attaching my zip. Now on the part, the allowance that I left for the zip, I'm going to be sewing the zip on the skirt. On the part where I have the butt contour, you are going to sew it on a curved line, but make sure that it is not too curvy so it doesn't get pointy. So just a little bit of curve, then I'll sew it all the way down to the end of the zipper allowance. Make sure that that part is not too curvy. If it's too curvy, your butt contour is going to be pointy. Instead of it to just sit well on your bum, it's going to be pointy. Now I'll go ahead to join the front and the back piece together. So I'll just go ahead and place the front piece on top of the back. So now I'll divide my waist measurement and my hip measurement into two, and then I'll just measure everything that I have. Whatsoever I have that is my real measurement, I'm going to mark it, and then I'll measure what I have. The excess that I have, I'll share it on both sides. I'll do the same for the hip as well. Measure from my waist to my hip line before adding my hip measurements. So however you know how to distribute your measurements, you can also do it here as well. So now I'm just going to connect with a curve line. Make sure that your lines are not too curvy. If not, your hip is going to point and it will not look good by the time you are putting it on. So make sure that the curve lines are not too curvy. I'm going to be sewing all the way down with the allowance that I added. Now when I get to that part of the bottom where I ironed, I'm still going to open it up, and so we just need the crease lines there. So you have to open it up and iron and sew as well. Sorry. That crease line at the bottom part is what is going to serve as our guide by the time we want to join our lining. So now I'll go ahead to also confirm the front part. I'll go ahead and reconfirm the measurements for the other side before joining as well. Always make sure to confirm the measurement so you know that what you are sewing is accurate. do for the front, the main fabric is what I'm going to repeat for the lining as well. Now I'll go to my ironing table to iron the side seams of the skirt. I'll also iron the side seams for the lining as well. So now I placed a dress ball under it, or you can, whatever you have to stuff. So because of the curvy part is why I placed this under the skirt. So it will just help me to iron the curve part very well. So you can place your bust hem under it, or if you don't have a bust hem, you can also stuff fabrics to just place under. I also have a detailed tutorial on how to make your own bust hem with scraps of fabric or pieces of essays. So I will just link it in the description. It helps for ironing curves, like the curvy part of your skirts, your bustiers and all of that. So on the part that is straight, you notice I just ironed it on the table straight like that. But on the curvy part, bust hem just makes everything easier. So I'll go ahead and iron it from the good part as well, so it just lays flat for me and it is well opened. So like I said, I'm going to repeat the same process for the lining as well. So I've gone ahead to do the same for the lining. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to first of all join the bottom part. Now this is the bottom part. I'm just trying to measure everything around the bottom to see that it is accurate. So and I did, and it was. So I'm going to sew all the way with ½ inch from the start to the end, from the part where the one slit starts to the end. I'm using hemming gum to sew, to just hold it in place by the time I'm done. So I'm now sewing all the whole around the bottom part. So now after that, I'm going to sew the part that has the slits. Now notice that place that we ironed before that has that crease line. I'm going to flip it over this way like this, and then we're going to sew. Now I'm sewing mine with a hemming gum as well to just keep it in place, but you can sew yours without a hemming gum on this slit part since we already added interface to it. It will just keep it in place. So I'm trying to make sure that the two notches match each other on the slits, and then I will just sew it all the way up. After the notch, I will still go further a bit, separating the other part of the slit from this one. So I'll just notch it a bit as well to just help it relax. Now I've gone ahead to sew one part. Now this is what we have at the edge. Now this is what we have on one part of the slit and the edge. This is it. So we still have one part of the slit remaining that is still open to sew. So the same way we have it, we can just flip it over this same way. Notice where this squeeze line is. I'll fold it this way, and then I'm going to pick the lining and the main fabric together. So to make it easier for you, you can just turn everything inside. Remember that we still have an opening at the waist, at the band part to turn from, so we have space very much available for that. So now I'll just flip it over this way, and then I will sew it and make sure that it gets to that part. So this is it. I will also add my hemming gum to just keep it in place. make sure that you sew it to the very end, and you just give it a little snip or a little notch at that part. Now I'm going to turn it over to the right side, so we'll see what we've done with the slit. So far this is what we have, and for the slits this is what we have. We've not ironed it yet, so I'll now pick the band part. We'll bring it outside and try to match it around the waist of the main fabric as well. The lining and that of the main fabric will match it together, because the next place we're going to be turning now is this band. Now see what we have on the slit. Now on the band we're just going to be flipping this over like this, and then I'm going to be sewing around it, all around the waist. Remember that we still have the part of the zip where we can turn it from, so make sure that you bring everything out and sew it till the end. Now by the time I'm done sewing, I'm going to be trimming out every excess and trimming out those parts of the zip that are no more needed. You can use a smaller zip if that is what you have, but I just wanted the zip to be long, so I decided to use this long zip. So I'm going to flip it over to the right side, and now you notice on that part where our zip went into, we still have some allowance that we can use to turn it. We have some opening that we can use to turn. So I'm going to flip it over like this on one side. So I'm going to flip it over this way and then go ahead and sew close to the zipper. I'm just going to sew close to the zipper, but please, it shouldn't be too close as well. So now I'll just trim out the excess, and then on the other side I will go and I will do the same. By the time I'm done sewing, I'm just going to use my hand needle to hand tack any little space that we have, any little space that is going to show, because we can't cover it completely, but we'll try to make sure that the opening is a bit tiny. That's why I'm pushing it to the end, and then I'll trim it, and I'll use a hand needle to just hand tack this little space that is here to just keep it in place. So now what will happen is I'll go and iron the band and the slits. So I'll be starting with the slits. Make sure you arrange it and the lining isn't going outside, it's not extending from the fabric outside. Make sure that you control that by the way you are ironing. So I'm just trying to open it up and making sure that the fabric for the lining is not bulging out, rather it is the Ankara that shows outside. Now after the slit, I'm just going to iron all the way around the length of the gown. I'll just iron it very well, and then I'll also go ahead to iron the band at the upper part. So guys, please, if you find this tutorial helpful, please guys kindly like, share and comment on the video. Please, your likes and your comments are very much appreciated. They help us to reach wider audiences that need this tutorial. Thank you very much guys. So I'm just going to be ironing the band, and I will just the same way use your hand to control it so the lining part doesn't pop out. I'll just iron it clearly and iron the part the zipper is going into as well. And I'm just going to iron the whole skirt and also go ahead and try it out for you guys to see when I'm done. So now this is the final outcome. This is the slit well relaxed and the band of the skirt. Now this is it. By the time I was done sewing, this was the final outcome of the skirt. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye. Seam lines are aligning, so now this is what we have. I'm just going to iron the entire skirt now to just have a perfect look and then try it out for you guys to see. Notice how the hip line is not pointy, it's just there, not pointy, not straight, just a tiny curve, not so pointy. So this is the slits of our skirt. So now this is the final outcome of this skirt. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Please, if you did, kindly like, share and comment. Thank you guys. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.